G'day everybody, my name's Luke Fitzpatrick and thank you for supporting Fish That Snag. Here's a map of probably the most common areas that I fish in Hervey Bay. One thing that you'll note if you are a regular visitor to Hervey Bay and if you're planning a trip to Hervey Bay is the deep channels that exist between Fraser Island and the mainland. In particular, I'm talking about this deep channel here that spills out into Platypus Bay, this channel, the middle channel here, and the channel that comes up on the eastern side of Big Woody Island. There is also another channel that comes past the pier through here. These channels are deep. The water moves rapidly through there, especially on a big moon, and as you can imagine, if the wind is coming in the right direction, the water stands up in those channels and can make boating and fishing incredibly hard, and getting across those channels in your boat quite dangerous. So there's something you definitely need to take note of if visiting Hervey Bay for a fish. Now I like to fish the rocky headlands around the islands quite a lot, okay, as everybody would know, and they actually sit alongside of a lot of these channels. So a technique I use to effectively fish soft plastics is to drift my soft plastics in the current, and I'm going to walk you through how I do that. Okay, so we've got a main island here or some sort of structure, it could be a rocky headland or whatever, and then under the water we have rocks extending out into the current. This blue line here is basically the edge of the fast moving water, and the water as depicted by this blue arrow up here is moving right to left very, very quickly. The black lines are just ledges, okay, rocky ledges that I've identified using my sonar. Here's my boat. Where am I going to put my boat to be able to fish this area quite effectively? Well, probably when you first look at it, you're thinking, let's go pop ourselves out here. But as explained, this can prove really, really hard, even with a good electric motor and anchor with the current moving from right to left so quickly. I cannot emphasize how quickly it moves in those channels. Sometimes you can go set your anchor over here and you end up over here before you know it. It can prove really, really difficult. While you're actually located here, getting your lure or your bait down to the bottom can also prove really, really hard. Sometimes you need an entire bucket of lead just to get it down to the bottom and hold. And while doing so, you're only exposing yourself to a small part of the structure. So if you were to fish out the back of this boat, throw your lure down onto the bottom here and it's going to bounce around, you're only going to get a small patch of the structure to fish, which is not optimal. The other option, I guess, is you could come down a bit further. You know, if there's water over the rocks, you can park over the top of here, or you can park down here and throw your lure back. Again, even if you've got a really well-weighted soft plastic or a bait, you're going to bounce along and only be exposed to one of the ledges, if that. After fishing in these particular areas, because they're nice little backwaters, little eddies where the water sort of stirs around, I'll sort of come and park myself out here, cast up in here first, pepper it, make sure there's nothing hiding in there, and then I go and sit myself in that calm water. Then it all becomes a game of angles and jig head weights. So what I try to do is park myself nicely, get a good angle on where the ledges actually are, and then cast out as far as I possibly can. So in this situation up to about here, and then I want to use the current and my jig head weight to do the work for me. So the jig head sinks down, hits the bottom about here, and when I give it a little hop, the current naturally takes it this way. Then I give it a little hop again, and I'm getting maximum exposure to the ledge. And I can do that, get it down to here, and then bring it back to the boat. And I can do that on all three ledges if I get the angle right and if my jig head is the correct weight. Maximum exposure to the structure. If my jig head is too light, it'll hit the water here and it'll probably get to the bottom about there, and I'll give it a hop and then it'll be down there before I know it, and I'm not going to have maximum exposure. If my jig head is too heavy, it's probably going to go smack onto the bottom, and then when I give it a hop, it's going to come towards me. Again, not getting maximum exposure along the structure. Some people might say, why aren't you parking over here, Luke? And as the water rushes over and the bait rushes over, the predatory fish will be sitting in this little bit here, ambushing them as they come over. Well, it's exactly the same theory on this side. I'd basically cast my lure up close as I can to the rocks, and rather than just retrieve it straight back towards the boat, I'd let it hop nicely down in the current along. Here's a little bit of footage I shot a couple of days ago, hoping that the stitches in my arm would hold and not break, using this exact technique. What I did first is I fished the little eddy in here, then I moved my boat in nice and close, and I threw my deeper sonar out and let it just drift down in the current until it identified where the fish were holding, and then I worked out what jig head size I needed to ensure that once I got to where those fish were, my lure was bouncing along nicely. For this session, the lure that I was using was an Oz Tackle Tuffy. It is a little fishy thing in 3.5 inches. Here's what the packet looks like. These are the white ones. I was actually using the Bondi colour